Constance, can you copy the link in the chat box? Can you guys copy the link in the chat? The class governors, can you copy it in the chat box? The link is in the chat box.
I can't see the link yet, ma'am.
It's in the chat box.
We don't have the link yet, ma.
Not your the Zoom chat box.
No, ma. There's no link here.
It's there. See me a second.
Hello, ma. We can't find any link here.
Okay, the link is on it now. Sent by Adeolu Adejobi.
Okay, so Adeolu, I've seen Adeolu, you shared it. Thank you so much, Adeolu Adejobi. Thank you. So you guys have it right now. I'm trying to see if I can copy it myself because I have to get somebody to do that directly. Just give me a second. I want to see if I can join the class myself and then copy it.
Copying it is not easy.
I want to do that. I want to try and do it myself. Adeolu Adejobi, are you in class? If you can, please share it with Constance.
I have shared it on the Stream One group.
Okay, I will share it
I
Can you
have the
can you
link now. Ma,
can
I
you
have
share
the
it
link
on
now.
that? Or can you put it on the group chat for us? Constance, is that Constance or the other governor? Can you put it on that our common group chat?
Okay, ma.
Thank you.
Yes, it's constant.
All right, thank you. I think we're good now. Just give me a second. Please do not share it to the world, though. It's just for this class. I'm begging you. Second. Maybe I will start in 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Uh, okay. Uh, okay, so let's quickly, before we talk about, let's quickly quickly, we're talking about organization. So let's quickly go back to that. Uh, so that the people that are not on the Zoom call can join that easily. And you might want to join that easily, you join that as well. Up to you. Trying to see if I join before we start, so I know that I'm doing the right thing. But just like we said initially, we speak to the concept of an organization, how what it entails is, it's central to the field of management. And even when you look at it from any angle, whichever angle you want to look at it, in any discipline, whether it's in health sciences or communications, whatever discipline it is, engineering, a lot takes place within the context of an organization. So we need to understand what an organization is. So we're saying that, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma.
Can hear you,
Hey,
ma.
man.
You are muted, ma. Should in case you are speaking. Your mic is muted, ma.
Yes, I just want to be sure that it's been live streamed and the people on the live stream can hear me. They can hear me as well. So could you confirm from your classmates if they're following the people on the live stream, if they're following us? If they are, we'll just carry on. Just confirm anybody from out of the governors or members of the class, we just confirm, and once they confirm, we'll just go on. So we can this is just to lay the foundation. Because when you talk about management, organization is key, is central to the for lack of a better word to use, the practice of management. So it's central to everything we do in this field. All right. And we also know that organizations is where you practice whatever it is we're discussing, in terms of in the field of management. I don't know whether you can hear me. Has anybody confirmed whether the people on the live stream could hear as well
We can
clearly?
hear you clearly, man.
Yes, the live stream is also clear. I logged in and checked.
All right, thank you very much. So when we're talking about, so let's now quickly just remind ourselves what we said. Who can tell us what we said earlier about what management is and an organization is? Who can remind us what we said earlier about what an organization is? Anybody from the class? Anyone? Can anybody remind us what we said? We just talked about it earlier. Before we now
Yes,
had to
doctor. Can I
pause.
proceed?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. You said an organization is a deliberately constructed social entity in which individuals work together towards a shared objective. And you said the major characteristics is characterized majorly by purpose, the structure, the process, and of course, the people who are socially related. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So basically, you've just read out what we have on the slide. Thank you so much for that. Anyway, we like to hear your voice. Can anybody else expatiate a bit further? Because we try to we started from the angle of why when people come together to do anything, whatever business, to set up an organization, you don't set up an organization, without a purpose. So can somebody please expatiate on that? Yes, Chiamaka.
Okay, good morning, Ma. Good morning, class.
Good morning.
All right.
Yeah.
So we tried to define an organization. Before definition, we tried to look at some of the features of an organization, and we talked about the fact that organization must have a purpose. There must be a reason why the organization exists. We also said that it must have structure. Structure is like central, and you try to explain that even the processes and are also the things that are embedded in a structure. So it talks about how the organization should run, how things should be done, the policies that exist within the organization. The structure speaks to the
Yes.
plans of the organization, the purpose, how
Yeah.
the purpose should be implemented or executed at the end of the day. And then we talked
Yeah.
about, you mentioned about informal and formal organization. You said we're going to discuss that
Yes,
in
yes, we'll
detail.
talk about that before we get to that. Thank you, Chiamaka. Okay, you were in that class. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, well done. So at the fundamental level, just bearing in mind that some people are joining us for the first time. So at the most fundamental level, we need to recognize the fact that when humans want to, so we have something in mind to achieve, we can't do that individually. That cannot be done by one person. So when you're speaking, when you're defining an organization and you're talking about the people element, it has to be driven by more than one person. So when people come together to achieve an objective, when they have a purpose in mind, the purpose can vary. So, and that is to say that every organization is formed fundamentally because of a reason. When you say you have a purpose, when we talk about even human beings, you say, oh, when you don't, when your life is not defined or driven by a purpose, you live your life anyhow, you live your life aimlessly. So when an organization is formed on the premise, on that very foundation. What the foundation that an organization is laid upon is purpose. There is a reason why an organization comes into existence. And that is why it's very critical that when we're defining an organization, it's characterized fundamentally by a purpose. So the purpose can be now broken down. You can now talk about it in the context or in the broader context of specific goals. So organizations are goal oriented. They are structured deliberately to accomplish a particular goal or a set of objectives. And of course, we know that this is usually premised on the purpose for which it was created in the first place. Now, we have different definitions. The one that I projected, putting everything together, we have different definitions over the years of different scholars trying to explain what an organization is. It's Bernard, for instance, says it is a system of consciously, don't underlining that word consciously. Bernard defined is one of the major Bernard is one of the major contributors to management thoughts, the principles of management, when you're talking about some of the theories that we use today. So Bernard in 1938 defined an organization as a system of consciously coordinated activities of two or more persons. So you're focusing on the fact that two people come together or two or more people come together for a reason in terms of to accomplish something together. And when you're now defining an organization in that context, whatever it is they're doing to accomplish that purpose, it has to be coordinated, well coordinated, before they can achieve their objective. One of another popular textbook, Robbins and Kotler, defined an organization as a deliberate arrangement of people assembled to accomplish specific purpose. And I like to use that definition to now draw out these three characteristics or three elements. Sorry, not characteristics. I'll use the word elements now of an organization. So 1, purpose; 2, structure; and 3, people. And of course, when you want to talk about process is, you can, discuss process generally as one of the levers in which you implement structure. Because when you want to put a structure, when you put a structure in place, you put processes in place for tasks to be distributed and responsibilities to be implemented. All right. So 1, purpose; 3, key elements; 2, structure; 3, people. Now let's make it more interesting, break it down. When we now want to explain some of the key characteristics of an organization. So we talked about the purpose, the fact that it's goal-oriented. We talked about that, objectives and people. We can't talk about an organization without referring to that. So they exist, to achieve objectives. We talk about the division of labor, the people that would carry out, the units, different units, functional units that are created to carry out to implement different aspects of the organization, functional units. So marketing is there, sales is there, finance. So you divide specific tasks, and according to specialization area, so that you focus on your own aspects to carry out whatever it is you're supposed to do within the organization. You focus on that, and when we as we progress, we'll speak to division of labor more elaborately. So we have actions that occurs within an organization would be oriented towards achieving these purposes that we've talked about. And these actions are consciously shaped through the design of the organization. That's when we now start talking about the structure, which speaks to the roles, how roles are assigned, responsibilities are defined, hierarchy within the organization. Of course, also talking about the division of labor as well that we spoke to. Don't forget that Bernard's definition talks about coordination of activities. So within an organization, tasks are systematically aligned. All right, it's not an organization is an open system whereby the action or what takes place in one unit would affect another unit. So let's give a live example. Let's give an example. For instance, production. Which units would affect which departments? Can you mention the department that would affect the production units?
Procurement.
Procurement. Thank you.
Maintenance.
Maintenance. Thank you.
Finance.
Sometimes finance. Very key. Very key. Finance. So it's a system of interrelated parts. Quality control. So
Technical
there must be
team, technology.
coordination. Yes, technology as well, IT. So there must be coordination of activities within an organization. So organizations are complex. All right. So it's not as straightforward. They're complex, they're multifaceted, and they are affected by different actions within activities and action within it. So that's why the design of the organization now becomes very, very critical, because the designs will shape, it will determine the structure of the organization, like we've explained. It will determine the culture of the organization. It will also explain the processes of communication, the communication process within that organization. It will affect even human resource practices within the organization. Now, formal and informal systems. And we're going to speak to the formal and informal organization. We talked about that. That was what Chiamaka was trying to break down for us, and I will allow her to speak at that time. So formal and informal systems also, that determines how interactions sometimes takes place, how rules are applied, the approaches that are used, the different approaches that can be used, even the communication process within the organization. So formal and informal systems shapes or characterizes an organization. Now talking about contemporary factors, because organization interacts with the environment. It is not a closed system. For instance, and even a mere advert that you put that an organization puts out can elicit feedback from the environment. Who can give us an example using the one I just said, an advert, and an advertisement placed on your products or your services can get different reactions, which would you will now use to say, oh, that's a feedback coming from, you know, whoever it is. You're putting an advert out. Of course, you're putting an advert out for your buyers, your consumers, the markets. All right. So who can give us, I don't want to say too much because I want somebody to give us an example of the fact that an organization interacts with its environment. All right. So there's Abraham Ayodele. You have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon, or good morning, ma'am. Sorry.
Good morning.
Yes, like an organization putting up an advert for expression of interest, inviting bidders, contractors to express their interest in project that the organization wants to carry out. So in this case, the contractors will express their interest by submitting bidding documents and all that. That's a reaction from the environment.
Okay, okay. Even though I was looking for something else, thank you for that. I can see more hands up. Just give me a second. Let me see the hands up. Thank you, Abraham. Let's have Chiamaka.
All right, thank you, Ma. So, using the scenario you painted, an organization puts out an advert. One of the ways customers or the environment can give feedback is in sales. So, if the advert is favorable, it will result in huge sales turnover. And if it's not favorable, it would, and so the organization will have to now go back to the market to find out why the customers are not reacting favorably to, you know, the advertisement or the product. And also sometimes you also find out, like Indomie, you find out that on the lips of everybody, the advert, people are singing it, is there, they're using it, you know, for skits, the tunes and all that. It shows that, okay, this advert was well received in the market. But when people are not interacting with the advertisement or the product, it shows that the advert was not well received.
So even so communication, under communication, right? One of the things that, thank you very much, Chiamaka, for that very good example. Some I can see your hands up, and just give me a minute to quickly just take notes of something Chiamaka said, and I don't want to forget it. All right, so one of the things you should take notes in communication is mass communication, which speaks to mass advertisements, the one that you put either on the one you put on the billboards, the ones you do on the what's the other media, TV, radio, people here,
social media,
television, yes. So media adverts. Of course, we have the social media now, which is very active. So I don't want to speak to social media yet. So when you put mass advertisement out, whereby once it's out, all right, you don't have is mass, so you don't have control over, you can't control how it is received. So for instance, there was an advert by one of the banks a few years back, during Easter, and there was a backlash. So we're talking about feedback now, because you interact, everything you do, everything an organization. So when I'm using you now, I'm referring to the organization. Everything an organization does, you're interacting with your environment. And, you know, so the environment is interacting with you. It's a two-way thing. All right. You are influenced by external forces, policies of the government, things you have in the external environment. You have policies, you have people, even the people you're selling to, whether you're selling products or you're selling services, the community you're based in, your interaction, things could happen. People's preferences could change. The socioeconomic environment, technology could change. Everything that takes place within that environment affects the organization. I'm speaking to adaptability now, which is more of the contemporary, looking at some of the characteristics of an organization when you're speaking to the fact that organizations don't exist in silo. And I was trying to use even the simple example of even you putting up an advert, a mass, you know, maybe you're trying to communicate your either your products or your service, or you're even giving out it was a goodwill message that the bank made during that Easter period, and there was a backlash. Who can remember that particular advert I'm referring to? I don't want to say it out myself. Who can remember that advert? I've already said it. It was during Easter period,
Selling
and
bank that said
there was a huge backlash. I want you to explain, to remind us and use it to explain. I mean, use it as an example. I'm trying to give it as an example of the fact that you don't do things. An organization is not isolated. Everything that takes place, both outside and within the organization, would have an influence on that organization, would have an impact on that organization. So somebody wants to speak to that advert. Is it Damilola Toriola?
Okay, ma. I had raised my good morning, ma. I had raised my hand earlier to give an example of this MTN adverts where they were communicating their services where like a long distance call where someone gave birth in the city and called his mom in the village saying Mama na boy. So there was this criticism that came to say that they were pushing agenda, like you're going to
Thank you very much. In fact, that's a very good example as well. So everything that, thank you very much for that, Damilola. That's a very good example. This person, Stephen, Olajire Stephen. Chiamaka, I can see your hand. Just give me a second. Let me allow other people. Olajire Stephen.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
There was an advert in 2025 by Bokumat. And one of the phrases was, "Oma Igbo cannot shit me." And it caused,
yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So it was kind of stereotype that Igbo are kind of who can cheat. So it caused a really negative feedback.
Yes. So let me just take one more and then we'll just close that up. Sam Adegeye. Thank you for that, Stephen. Sam Adegeye.
All right, thank you, ma. I want to, I don't know but the UBA used particular advert that was a few years ago. We discussed it in our previous class where he used whiskey. Is it UBA now? He used whiskey for his advert. And the bank you are mentioning about in the Easter period that they said it has risen. It rose like aggregate bread.
Oh, I think it was Sterling Bank. I don't think it was UBA. I think it was Sterling. Yes, there was a backlash. So everything an organization must must understand the fact that the environment, whatever they do, whatever they put out from that organization, there will be a feedback. That feedback is what they should watch out for, whether people receive them well. So they are constantly interacting with the environment. And this is just using the examples of what we've done just now. I mean, all our discussion, the examples we gave is just on adverts alone. Mass adverts, whether you're putting your products out or you're putting your services out for people, trying to communicate the value in your products or your services to people through mass advertisement, or you're even coming out in a particular season, to align with that season, whether it is a religious season, whether it is a Christian or Muslim festival that you're aligning, just to show your alignment with it. Whatever you put out, it's a communication. So, and it would influence, the feedback rather from that shows that there's always a feedback. That's the point I'm trying to make. And that feedback is what an organization should watch out for. And that's what they will go back to go and work on, whether their goods were well received or the message was well received or not well received. So the point here is organizations do not exist alone. Their influence, they interact with the environment. When there are changes within the external environment, it will affect the organization. Government policies can change. It will affect the organization. Communication from the organization must be such, and we're going to discuss this more under communication. All right. So it shows that even when they are communicating anything that's coming out from the organization, it's going out into the environment, can also have a major impact on that organization. So now let's go on to formal and informal organization. So now I also mentioned the fact of continuity. All right, before we now speak to formal and informal organization, I want to mention the fact of continuity as well. That's another key characteristics of an organization. An organization is designed to operate over time, right? We talked about coordination of activities. I just don't want to forget. I want us to take count key points on some of the key elements of characteristics of organization. There's continuity of activities, continuity of the organization, coordination of activities. We've spoken to division of labor. We've spoken to the goal orientation, adaptability, changes within the external environment. Organization was learned to respond to changes within the external environment. They are influenced by whatever takes place, outside the organization, and they must be able to adapt to those changes. So when there's a reaction, that was what brought that example of the advert. If there's a reaction by the external environment, the organization must quickly respond to that. They must go back. There were apologies issued by, I think, the Boku people, the MTN people, and I think Sterling Bank that put out the advert as well. Samadegaye, I can see your hand up.
All right, sir. I wanted to ask about this Dangote. You can remember when, I don't know, when Dangote has issues with a particular lady in the north that has an accident, and he came out to address it. And when he has issues with the Lupeng too, the majority of the staff was laid down because they joined group. Could that be? Can we relate that to what you are talking about, these adaptations where it came out properly to address it immediately, not to affect the image and the goodwill of the organization?
Okay, so let me put it this way. I was trying to make a point that organization does not exist in silo. So that this question rather that you ask, I can answer it in different ways. Well, let me just go back to the points that we made about the fact that organizations are constantly interacting with the environment. So changes within, number one, changes outside the external to the organization, in the external environment, like government policies. For instance, when this current regime rather, when they came in newly, and they according to them, abolished completely fuel subsidy. What happened? There was, prices of, they said, okay, they're making it to be the forces from the market should dictate the price of petroleum products. What happened? Prices of PMS, AGO, even jet fuel went up. And of course, we saw increase in transportation, energy costs, so many things. Organizations have to adapt. That would, of course, impact their cost of goods sold, of course, starting from cost of operation, carrying out the regular, the day-to-day activities with the operating expenses, it would have impacts on even their employees. So there's so many changes. Organizations must learn they will have to respond to those changes, which is why one of the key characteristics of an organization is adaptability. So I was speaking to that from that angle. Another example that I would also use is if you are, especially for the fast foods. So I remember there was a time when McDonald's had to change, the approach on they had to change their menu in response to changes in the socio-cultural environment, whereby lifestyle changes. You see more people are more conscious of their health. They're more conscious of what they consume. So you find, especially when people were getting to a certain age, even government at some point were increasing the taxes on drinks that has a high sugar content level. Why? Because in the health sector, there were increase in numbers of diabetic patients in some countries, especially in the West. So they increased the tax on some of these products. So now there's some particular industry, especially in the food and beverage industry or hospitality, that's, some of these products is a core aspect of their service delivery. So what do they need to do? They need to adapt. So you see, changes, you have to take notes. Okay, so we're bringing out new variants, low sugar or zero level sugar, and then so that's the consensus of me speaking to the fact that the environment, the external environment, influences the organization. I hope that is clear. Now, when we are now talking about the question you asked in regards to Dangote, I think the accidents that you're referring to was one of the celebrities' younger sister that Dangote's truck knocked down her sister, if I can remember correctly, because it was well publicized. I think she got on the social media and was talking about it, viral posts, making a lot of posts, and that went viral. People were talking and commenting. Of course, Dangote had to respond. So that crisis management, the fact that this was a crisis, and the way an organization respond when there are issues, because this is now about the organization now. One of his truck knocked down a person who was injured and eventually died. How do they respond in a situation like that? So it's about communication, it's about crisis management, and the fact that when we now talk about communication, one of the things that an organization should take note of is that everything you do, even as an individual, your silence is communication. You cannot but communicate. We're communicating in different ways. So, and that is a different, if you want us to go into that, that's a different conversation, but it still speaks to the fact that everything that takes place, an organization does not exist on its own. If anything happens, whatever you put out, and whatever, anything that takes, even with your services of your products, if there's a damaged product, they will not go and meet the seller. They will talk about the organization. If it's your products, for instance, if you find cockroach in a bottle of Coke, you will not go and meet the vendor. You speak about the organization that this was found. So it's about, you're selling your products to the people within the environment. Their reaction to your products is a feedback. All right, so we're going to talk about that in when we're dealing with communication. It's a feedback. If there is, like in the case of Dangote, the truck driver knocks down someone, you cannot ignore it because it is still part of the organization. So it's the reaction of people to that event is a feedback. And to be honest, they shouldn't have waited for the reaction that happened. They should have, and there should be processes within an organization on how to manage crisis. So this is just to say that every activity of an organization within an environment, you will get a feedback. So that is the point. I'm going to just wrap it up within that. Yes. Akinola.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. So I wanted to give maybe a few examples as well to what you're saying.
I know you made mention of fuel price. So imagine the company into transportation, right? Fuel price is high. How are they going to adapt? Are they going to increase price? Are they going to plan their route to shorter routes? Are they going to incentivize drivers to maybe do more trips or something, right? So they eventually will adapt to that particular change.
That's
Then,
what, yeah, that's the adaptability aspect of it, yes.
Then another example is, I think CBN is asking banks to raise a particular capital. So a lot of them are actually trying to meet up that quota. They're trying to like meet up. So they are adapting to that policy, because if they don't, that's CBN being the tax environment, right? If they don't, it's going to affect them in one way or the other. So they most likely are working to hit that quota. I know a couple of banks have announced that they've met it, right? While others are still working towards adjusting to fit in that particular new directive. So that's another adapted example, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I have another person who wants to contribute. Thank you, Akiola Fulayo. So I have Adediro Olu.
Good afternoon, ma.
Yes.
Yeah, in line to what you said, I have few contribution, and I don't know if I'm wrong. You can correct me, ma. In line to communication, I feel concerning what you said, that's the role of corporate communication, because the role of corporate communication, it cannot be overemphasized in an organization, because it brings about them managing crises and putting out informations. In line to
Which was why I said that, it can be answered in different ways, but it's mainly under communication. It's mainly under communication. What you said is mainly about but to be honest, if you now look at it broadly as well, it's about the fact that everything that an organization does, there is always a feedback. There's always a reaction from the environment. So when we want to look at it in the context of the advertisements, even your products, like Chiamaka gave the example, it's either your products are well received or they are not well received. If they're well received, people would buy. So if they like the texture of your product, whatever it is, if they like your services, people will subscribe more. You can see that even forget about competition. Let's even leave competition out of it, because we have multi-choice and we have other substitutes that you can go to. So they have the in terms of entertainment, so they have competition. But in terms of even to the price increase, which has been consistent, and it's gone up exponentially. If you want to talk about what's the word now? With me, I'm not an English person. Astronomical increase in prices. All right. So you've seen that people's reaction would be, let's look for substitutes. Subscribers will go down, which was why I said everything you do. And the point I'm trying to make with that is about the fact that organizations do not exist in silo. It is influenced by its external environment. I hope you understand that. But when you now want to talk about the examples that the question that I ask is more about crisis, management, communication, is more of how that is, and of course that is also a conversation around everything that you do within an organization as well, in terms of how do you manage crisis when you have a reaction, when you have a feedback, like those adverts we mentioned. We'll talk about that when we're discussing mass advertisement, because in mass advertisement, it is very important for people to understand purpose, context. If you are in the north and you're making advertisement that goes, you're putting out things, whether it is mass or even one-on-one communication, it's very important. You have to know the culture, the context. In Africa, there's some things that people will not accept. There's some things that so that's about communication, and that's a broader concept. But in the context of we just talking about organization, we're talking about the fact that organization is influenced by its environment. changes within the environment will affect the organization. So organization must learn to adapt. So those are the even internal environment as well. So when you're speaking about adaptability, you're not just looking at it in the context of the external environment alone. Organization must have the ability to respond even to changes within its internal environment as well. But majorly because they can control their internal environment to a large extent, but they don't have control over the external environment. If there's inflation, they don't have control over inflation. They don't have control. Yes, I know that we have strong what's it called, associations, which also enable certain sectors to lobby the government in terms of policies. Even as the banking sector is very key, financial sector is key to the economy of any nation. There's sometimes they might not even be able to influence some of the decisions that are coming from the oversight body, which is the CBN. And now that policies will come, that they don't have control over that. To a large extent, they don't. So that's why adaptability is a core. It's a core characteristics of an organization. They must be able to respond. They must be able to, if there are changes within their people's preferences changes, for instance, and your core products. If people are deferring away from it, we don't want to take sugar again. We're reducing the large number of people that are not, the number of people, population of out of the population, maybe the number of people that even young people are not, some of them are, they are reducing their sugar intake. So you have to take note of that if you're a soft drink or beverage, whatever it is, if that is what you're doing, if you're in that industry, you have to take note of that. So adaptability is very important. An organization must develop its capacity to recognize changes within its external environment, and even when things are changing, even within, maybe people's actions, people's attitudes, employees' attitudes within the organization, they must develop the capacity to recognize shifts and changes, and they must be able to respond to it. All right, so adaptability is very, very important. All right, so we're going to move away from that. We've spent enough time discussing adaptability. Akinola Afolayan, was that from a previous, raising up your hand from previous time? This is, you want to make a comment now, or let me just lower your hand. I think that was from a previous one. So let's speak to the fact, the social aspects, when the definition we gave about is a deliberately constructed social entity, which talks about the interaction, is a complex thing, which talks about the interactions that takes place amongst members of an organization, the people aspects, so, and when, most times when you ask people to talk about informal versus formal organizations, they will think that you're talking about the informal organizations that, enterprises that run in the informal sector. Chiamaka, now I want you to now explain to the class, when we're talking about informal versus formal organization, what are we referring to?
Okay, but so this is from my own personal understanding of informal and formal. So informal
organization, not just your personal understanding, because you were in class and we discussed it elaborately. So don't tell me your personal understanding. I'm not going to take that. Yeah, carry on.
Okay, so a formal organization is an organization that is structured. I actually came late to that class, but it has the functions are defined, and leadership is well established. There are boundaries, there are official structures that guide how people behave or act within the organization. There are rules also that are established to guide people's behavior. But in an informal organization, there are no boundaries, and each informal organization can also exist within a formal organization. There is no defined structure, no defined functions, there are no boundaries. But from the last class, we established that informal organizations help to aid problem solving within the formal organization. Informal organizations also help in addressing unofficially conflicts, resolving issues between parties within, and they also help to drive communication. Although we said that sometimes the communication may, how do I put it now? So sometimes they can fuel rumors, they can fuel gossips, they can fuel rumors and all of that, but they also help to spread information across the organization. I think.
All right. Thank you very much, Amaka. You've done very well. You've done justice. All right. So it is basically to say that both exist, concurrently. They exist concurrently in every organization. So when you're speaking to the informal aspects of an organization, you're saying that, even though they are distinct systems of interaction, but they are interconnected. They are running simultaneously. Now, there was something the former mentioned, Chiamaka mentioned, and I had wanted to speak to that before. I think it just escaped my mind. And I want you guys to please take this down. It's very important. I wanted to talk about it. It's one of the key characteristics of an organization. I wanted to speak to that. Now, organizations are built on rules. And I'm sure you agree. Rules, it's one of the key characteristics. I wanted to speak to it before. So I just want to quickly run on that. A rule tells us within an organization how things have been done in the past and how they should be done in the future. Now, rules are very important for organizations to succeed because it helps us, it protects the organization and it ensures that there's what we call rationality. It ensures that we have rationality within an organization. So let's quickly take a closer look at what we mean by rules. Now, there are common distinctions when we're talking about rules. So they're formal rules, all right? So formal rules such as you arrive at within this organization, this is what do you call it, resumption time, and this is the closing time. So resumption time for all staff is 8 a.m. and closing time for all staff is 6 p.m. So that means if you come in after 8, you've broken the rule. If you leave the office before 4 and before 6, you've broken the rule. That means you must take permission if you're coming. So rules are meant to guide all the members of that organization. All right? It is, even though we can now start saying that, should there be flexibility? Should everybody be bounded by that? Rules helps to define boundaries within organization. And that's one key thing. Everybody knows what they are meant to do and what they are not meant to do within, what they are not supposed to do, rather, within an organization. So formal rules are very, very important, all right, within an organization. So we can also look at rules from the angle of professional rules. Now, who can tell us, who understands what we mean by professional rules? You can use an example. Does anybody want to try?
I would like to try.
Okay.
I
didn't ask you formal rules because formal rules is very, very clear. You can define, but professional rules, yes.
Okay,
please go ahead.
professional rules should mean the bodies of regulations and policies that guides a particular profession For example, accounting, lawyers, medical doctors, there are rules that guide their profession.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. So if you are in that profession, from the time when you're studying for that course or that profession, you have internalized some certain things. These are the way when you're talking about accountants, they pride themselves as the custodians of ethics. Even in our broad field of management, they are very strong on ethics, the proper way to keep your books, the proper way, to present certain things, especially when it comes to financial record, so they pride themselves highly on ethics within the organization. Of course, there are things that you've internalized over time in terms of how you carry out your profession. Now let's speak to legal rules. Who can speak to legal rules? Anybody? Legal rules.
Okay, let me just give an example from my observations in the court.
Yes.
So first of all, when the court is sitting, first of all, what's it called? So something happened at one of the hearings I attended a few weeks ago. And so the magistrate was a Yoruba woman, and the defendant could not speak English. She had to call for an interpreter to be interpreting. So when I left, I was asking my lawyer, I said, but this woman is a Yoruba woman. Why is she not just asking the guy the question in Yoruba? She's understanding him. Why is she saying, interpreter, what is he saying? She said that the rules of the court says that the official language is English language, and that is the language that is maintained. It doesn't matter if the magistrate is Igbo or Yoruba, regardless of the tribe, you must maintain English language and assume that the law only understands English language. So that I can take it that is one of the rules, the legal rules or the rules of the legal profession.
Thank you very much. Even though you're speaking it in the context of a legal profession, but that speaks clearly to what we're trying to say. But let's now even bring it simply to an organization, any organization. Damilola.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the legal one you talked. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
I know that.
No. It doesn't have to be within the. Chiamaka gave an example of within the legal profession, and I'm saying it's not just within the legal profession. We're now looking at it in the context of an organization.
Okay, so in the legal profession still, their outfits, they're always on black. I don't see a lawyer. I'm not seeing a lawyer in the courtroom that would wear another color and wear their wig and all that.
And that will speak to you internalizing the way you dress and that's a professional role. I hope you are seeing the difference. It's not a legal role now. That example you gave is a professional role. So, for instance, there was one backlash some years back about a lawyer who had been called to bar, a lady who was now acting as a model, and then she wore, there was something she did. I think maybe Seminu, I can't remember. And there was a huge backlash and there was a discussion about it. And it was, it was thrown out. I mean, respected legal luminaries or whatever they call themselves, they were debating it. That can she be a model? If she's going to be a model, what are the boundaries? Because they have a way they dress and they present themselves. And like you said, professional rules are things that you have internalized over time because of your profession. For you to even be called to bar, there are certain things that you'd have been trained on in terms of what you can do and what you must not do. Boundary lines that must not be crossed. So that's the legal field, and it's in every field, whether you're a pharmacist, or you're a medical practitioner, or nurse, or different fields. Even engineers, they all have their code of ethics and code of conduct, how they should be. So those are professional rules. I hope that is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
So now looking at legal rules, Chiamaka gave a good example, but I think we can now bring it into the context of an organization. We have Jane. Jane have not spoken today.
Hello.
Okay, so it's a
Good
man
morning,
that
ma.
using James. Good morning. You have the floor.
Yeah, we are actually together. So
okay,
a good example
go
for the
ahead.
governing body is NAFDAC. They are like primary. Their responsibility is to regulate what people consume. E.g. now, government has they banned sachet alcohol, which they are the one in charge of those regulatory. Their purpose is to regulate what people consume. Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, somebody was interrupting my class. I needed to quickly pick that. Please, can you give that example you gave on NAFDAC again? I didn't follow you. Apologies for that.
I said a good example of governing body and NAFDAC. They are the one regulating what we consume. Of recent, government just banned sachet alcohol for consumption.
Well, I'm trying to follow you. We can hear you. We can hear you. Can still hear you.
So I'm just trying to chip it in that NAFDAC is a good example of governing body. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so we're speaking to legal rules within the context of an organization. Let me have Afolayo Akinola.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So I think I'm coming from the angle of obligation, right, as legal rule. The obligation of yourself as an employer, employee to employer to employee, employer to the customers that are dealing with. And a good example is a confidentiality of information, right? Breach of data privacy, conflict of interest as an employee, things that you like is basically obligation.
Yeah, because see, legal rules are directives that are explicit, they are compulsory, and they are, the things that you must not do. For instance, your organization might say you cannot use office resources for personal use. You cannot use it for your personal things. That is a clear rule that has been stipulated within your organization. So it's usually within, it's clear. So sometimes some particular job roles would, the example that Kela gave, would require you signing an NDA, rather, non-disclosure agreements, in terms of what goes on within your unit, in terms of confidentiality, or even data, company data or customer data. For instance, in the medical field now, you cannot discuss, even if the person is your spouse, except your spouse gives clear what's that in permission, is that, or consent, is that what they call it, for you to discuss it. So they have a high level of confidentiality. You can't disclose somebody's health status with another person, an adult. It's only a child that you can discuss an underage child, that you can discuss whatever is going on with that child with his or her parents or guardian. But when it now comes to an adult, that confidentiality clause is very strong. So there's some legal rules in terms of what you can do and you cannot do within the organization. So a doctor that is working in an organization cannot discuss one patient's record with another person. It's a rule. Within the organization, you are not allowed to use your office resources for personal things. Is a rule. So these are clear rules, targets within an organization, and and these are, we'll stop it at that. Now let's talk about standards. And I think that example that the man that spoke under Jane's voice was trying to, give. Standards within specific industries. So these, of course, we have ISO that also monitors certain things. Please, can you give me a minute, please? Sorry, I apologize for that. Yeah, what were we saying about standards? Organizations are bound to do things by standards. So when we talk about standards, who can give us an example? Yes, Samadegaye.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. The examples I wish to give initially, it was on email. During our high SO standardization, was I sent a general mail to us that this particular font we are meant to use, this particular line spaces we are meant to use whenever we are sending mail, and they changed the logos and the standard mail.
Thank you very much. Very, very important. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Judge. Judge Uche, thank you for that example. Very good example. Judge, you have the floor. I don't think Judge is here because his hand is just hot. But that was a very good example because standard guides quality in some key sectors also that are okay. You are Judge, can you talk to us now? I can see that you've connected your audio now.
Yes, I can. I was going to respond to the question on standards.
Okay, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, so like you rightly mentioned, there are standards that guide different industries, and many organizations that operate within these industries are mandated to typically follow those standards. For instance, in the aviation industry, they have certain standards that guide maintenance of aircraft and even the conduct of staff that work within such. Yes.
Yeah.
There are standards
thank you
like
very
ISO
much.
9001 and everything. Yes, which is
Thank
a
you very
quality
much. So we're looking at rules exhaustively. In fact, that's where we're going to end today's class because I think I'm really exhausted now. But we're looking at rules exhaustively because
please don't go now.
Because organizations, one of the things that define, and before we now go into evolution of management thoughts, which will just be a revision, we're looking at some of the principles that we still use in organizations today that guides our decisions, our approach, our strategies sometimes, how they came about, even how work is structured or designed within an organization, how they came about, some of the policies that you see, in different types of organizations, because we have different types and different forms of organization, how they came about, the premise, that's why we're going to look at some of those theories and how they evolved, where they started from. I think people that attended that my previous class, we looked at historically some of these some countries, some tribes, how they influence some of the theories that we use today. That we'll look at that. Well, let's look at, we're going to just round up on informal and formal organization, but let's quickly wrap up on rules. Sometimes I tend to jump really fast, so please call me back when I'm doing that, especially when I'm tired. So rules are very important within organizations, just like we said. Organizations are based on rules. So when you see professionals, architects, legal firms, health facilities, you can see how we looked at these different types of rules, from formal rules to professional rules, to legal rules, to standards. And finally, we're going to look at informal social rules. So when we talk about informal social rules, who can guess? I don't want to use the word guess. Guess is too. Who can tell us what you think we're talking about when we're talking about informal social rules? Yes, Adeyemi Adenika.
Okay, yeah, Adenika. Crown is not wicked. Good morning, ma.
Adenika. Adenika. I want to pronounce
Adenika.
it properly.
Crown is
Adenika.
not wicked. Adenika.
Oh, Adenika.
Exactly.
Adenika. Crown is not wicked.
Yes.
It sounds as if crown is Adenika.
Okay. Adenika.
You explain to us. You explain to us later after the class. Okay. So yeah, let's focus on the question.
Yes. So when we talk about social informal rules, it speaks to things like dress code, dress code. Yeah. So when people just believe that they can dress in a certain color. For example, in my office, there is no rule that says we should wear a particular color on Monday, but informally, people wear white. People wear white. And then even myself, I just saw myself wearing white on Monday because I see one or two people wearing white. And then as on Mondays, almost everybody is wearing white. And those are examples of social informal rules. It's not stated that you must wear white.
For that. Thank you. Thank you for that example. We're going to expatiate a bit. Thank you so much for that. That lays a very good foundation for that. So we have Sam Adegeye. Sam Adegeye, you have the floor.
Yeah. My own example of social and non-informal social role is respect to an organization. Some organizations give a rule. For me, I find myself in an organization that said that if you want to address anybody, you can call them by their name. But me, being a Yoruba guy and wear cultural home, I hardly find my line manager calling him by name. To me, I just call him Mr. or Sir or Dre. But in the mail, you address them formally based on the rule. You should address them by their name. So I want to know. I want you to clear on that. Is that non-informal social rule?
Okay, so we'll come to that. You answer the question yourself when we get there. Thank you for that example as well. So I have more hands up now. Can we have Akinola? Briefly, let's keep it short. After Akinola, we have Rachel, and then we have Blessing Adio.
So I think something around social etiquette, right? Maybe when you're in a quiet room, you don't put your phone on speaker and start speaking loud, or joining queue. When somebody sneezes, you probably just tell them bless you. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yes. Let's have the next person. Rachel.
All right, ma. Actually, Rachel, what I wanted to mention has been mentioned. I just want to talk about joining activities, just like maybe stretching time. For me, in my office, we do this stretching time. So I think it's part of informal social rules. Joining team activities.
Sorry, can you take that example again? I didn't quite follow.
I said for me, joining team activities, just like stretch, we used to call something stretch o'clock, whereby every one of us get to stand up to stretch ourselves. So I think informal social rules also includes that, joining the team activities in an organization.
Okay. Blessing Nadio. Blessing, are you with us? Okay, we can't hear you. Let's have Lovette. Okay, we can hear you now, but your voice is very faint. Yes, Blessing, we can hear you.
Okay, so an example is when you go to the bank and you're supposed to join a queue. You're not supposed to join the queue or try to disrupt the queue when the cashier is attending to customers.
Okay. You know what I want you to do? I want you to try as much as possible to keep it within the context of an organization. All right. So now, if you as a customer going to so you are now an external person coming into the bank. I understand your example, but we're saying all these things that we're discussing it within the context of an organization. So we're not looking at it as a customer coming into an organization, what the person is meant to do and not meant to do. Thank you. All right. So let's have Lovett. After Lovett, we'll clip it there. Lovett?
Okay.
Idausa.
Good afternoon,
Yes.
ma. Yes. Good afternoon, ma. Good afternoon, everyone. So informal social rules, they're actually unwritten guidelines that influence how people behave or interact within an organization. So unlike the legal rules, they are not enforced by law, but they are still very powerful. And most times they are based on our culture, our tradition, then group expectation and personal relationships.
Thank you very much for that. So basically, I mean, she tried to summarize it nicely. So they are like the legal rules that are written. I mean, standards that are expected based on maybe the industry standard, and organization also creating its own standards to say this is how, and this is the minimum, this is specification. Of course, the industry standard that guides, which you have an oversight body that monitors what you now have, and of course, professional rules that also speaks to the profession of the, the major profession. So even though different professionals work, in different organizations, that it's also large in terms of not specific to that professions alone. But if you are in the legal departments in an organization, the rules of your profession that should guide the way you operate. In fact, there was when we talked about rules in one of I think the previous MBA class, there were lots of arguments about, even for the accountants, they are saying, okay, if your professional rule says you cannot do this and your organization is saying you should do it, what will you do? I hope you understand what I'm saying. We had a lot of discussion around that professional rule. I didn't want to engage you guys on it because none of you brought it up, so I just left it. Because you're a lawyer, you are the company secretary, you are the legal department or whatever of your organization. Your organization is asking you to do something, and your professional rule is against it. How will you handle that? All right. So those are conversations, because you're an MBA. We use hypotheticals, we use real life situations, the case studies around some of these things to discuss how you handle certain things when you find yourself in it, which is why I said I forgot to talk about rules, because rules are very critical within organization. We need to understand, and I'm sure these are things you do normally, but we need to bring it out for us to be able to relate with it. So for instance, if I throw that question at you, you're an accountant, and I know I'm sure this class is large enough. I'm sure I have accountants in this class, and your organization is asking you to do certain things that contravenes the ethics of your profession. What will you do? You can even be accountant, can be any of, the key professions, and you're working in an organization. You're an architect. They are telling you have a building project. They say, yeah, move it this way, cover this one up, do that. How will you do? So it's an hypothetical question. How would you approach that? Yes, it's all of it.
Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
I think according to professional ethics and code of conduct of Accounting Association, what they said is when you have anything contrary to what you are to deliver as an accountant, you have two options. When you advise the management on the effect or the damage that a report or what they're expecting you to do will cause to the organization, and then they did not listen to you, you have to resign. You have to resign.
So now,
yes.
let's now talk practice. Now you've told us what your body, your professional body, the rules within your professional body and what they've advised. Now let's now talk in practice. So I just want to engage you engage your class for like 5 minutes as we close, today's class. In practice, what do you think is feasible in practice? So let's have the ladies. I can see the ladies raising up their hands now. So let's have Esther Shuberu.
Okay, so in my opinion, you're first of all loyal to the organization. When you join the company, you sign a contract, and most employee contracts states that you have to uphold, the rules and regulations of the organization. And it's also, there is always a clause that says that rules that are stated within or that will even be stated in the future, as long as you are an employee of this organization. So first of all, you're loyal to the organization, except you don't want a job anymore and you're ready to resign. So in my opinion, one also has to be, diplomatic about it. Let there be paper trails, let there be mail trails that, give that explicit instructions so that when there's an issue later on in the future, you can always refer to the, to the paper trail and say, this, I was instructed to do this. That's my, then also you can also escalate to, top management when the instruction is probably coming from a line manager or coming from, someone that is not is not the CEO, for instance. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, Esther. So let's have Joy Oleka. After Joy, we'll have maybe 2 men, and then we'll round up on that.
Okay, good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
Just to further buttress the last speaker, the first speaker, which was the male, he said the first option is to resign. Then being realistic, if you don't want to resign and still keep your job, I think it's better to have everything documented, but still go ahead and do what the company tells you to do, basically.
Yeah, I want to hear definitely, and thank you, Joy, for being, because I don't want you to be just be telling us, let's be practical. All right, Joy, thank you so much for being practical. You've given us your opinion. I'm not saying I align with what she has said. I'm just saying I like the way she answered the question. So there's no go between. She was very clear on what you should do, and that's what I want to hear. Thank you, Joy. So let's have Okorie John. Okorie.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So to add to what everybody has actually said, first of all, it needs to be documented, and also put a disclaimer. Fine, the person that asks you, your boss that asks you to do certain things may not actually know the implication. So you need to try to explain, if this is done, look at what the outcome is going to be. Then secondly, you can also seek professional advice on maybe your professional body, like what is obtainable in the ICANN Institute, where you have different districts. You can also seek their professional advice on what to do, because at that point, you're actually in a state of dilemma. Because it's easier said than done, you just resign and everything, but let's be practical here. So that's all I have to say, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's take, if I ask you to write an essay on this one now, that's your assignment too. Let's have where you must give clear recommendations on what you want to do. So that's one of your CA for the course. All right. So we're not going to I'm not going to make comments. I'm just going to listen to the two sides of argument. So let's have Abraham Ayodele Oshijowo.
Hello, ma.
Yes, please.
Yeah, yes, ma. If ask me to do something that violates my professional ethics or code of conduct, I must refuse to comply. So what I would do, for instance, in a case whereby I'm a director of procurement of my organization, and we are asked to award a contract to a specific company without competitive bidding. For instance, if competitive bidding is the default procurement method to award the contract. So what I will say is, I will advise the on due process and procurement regulations. Then I will recommend that we should follow this. We should follow competitive bidding procedures. Then I think that's where I can actually escalate the recommendations to them. So if they see the scenarios, they should be able to probably say, okay, let's
Okay, so thank you everyone for we can't hear Abraham again. Thank you everyone for bringing yourself to the class and being present. You know, I like a present class, and your class is present, even though it's large, but it's present. I will be sending you my question. It just came to me now, so I'm having this brainwave now. I'm going to develop my question around this, and it will be part of your CA for the course. And then you're going to do it in groups so that it is easy for us to present our findings in class. So I will develop the question and put it on the platform for the class governors to share. But before we go, let's round up on informal social rules. The last lady that spoke about it actually did justice to it by explaining the fact that there are unwritten rules in contracts to written rules, which we are obligated to follow. But even though, and the first person that spoke about talking about white shirts, you know, that came from you observing, because sometimes you observe some of these unwritten social rules or informal social rules are things that comes from your interaction with him. You come into an organization, you look around, you observe how people act, how people greet, how people dress. You know, of course, there's some formal rules with regards to dressing, all right, which would have been probably stated. So those are clear formal rules which you probably would even have written down in your staff handbook. But there are informal social rules around certain things, so many things. And somebody gave an example. Of course, you enter into a meeting, you turn your phone off or you put it in silence so that it does not disrupt the meeting. Those are just social etiquette, things you observe, behavioral things that you should do. Just like we talk about in OB, we talk about psychological contracts. These are not psychological contracts per se, but these are things that, even though they're not written explicitly, they're expected when you find yourself in an organization. And then within a particular organization, the culture of the organization sometimes will determine some rules which are not said, but which are practiced, not the way people behave, the way people receive themselves, the way they talk, and it's usually through social interaction and observation. All right. So, and over time, you know, you just observe that this is the way things are done here. This is the way people interact here. These are certain things I would do and I would not do. So, and that sort of concludes what we'll say about rules, which is another key characteristics of an organization. Thank you everyone for attending today's class and for giving your time on Saturday. I do not take it for granted. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, and then we'll fix another makeup class so that we can come up to speed, and then we'll be able to talk about communication. I love to talk about communication, so that will be, I think, the last topic that we will discuss. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma.
Yeah, thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma.
Thank you very much, ma.